I wanted to take a few minutes to talk about the United States Agency for International Development, or as it's more commonly known, USAID or USAID. If you've never heard of USAID before, you're not alone. A lot of people haven't, but it's been in the news recently because Donald Trump and Elon Musk have decided to completely abolish this crucially important federal agency, which is likely illegal. But before we get there, let's talk about what USAID is. USAID is a federal agency, one of the three pillars of U.S. foreign policy, aka the 3Ds. The 3Ds of U.S. foreign policy refer to defense, the Department of Defense, basically our military, diplomacy, the State Department, all of our diplomatic efforts around the world, including our embassies and our engagements with international organizations like the United Nations, and development. That's where USAID sits. According to USAID's website, which you can only view now in the Wayback Machine since Musk and Trump took USAID's website down, USAID says that it leads international development and humanitarian efforts to save lives, reduce poverty, strengthen democratic governance, and help people progress beyond assistance. Basically, USAID is the arm of our government responsible for funding programs around the world that includes everything from disaster relief after an earthquake, to building roads and water wells, to funding healthcare programs in the developing world, to emergency food assistance due to famine and food insecurity, to supporting pro-democracy and pro-human rights civil society organizations everywhere around the world. USAID works on reducing conflict around the world, promoting democracy, global health, assisting with agriculture, economic growth. You get the idea. The agency is responsible for quite a lot. In 2023, we spent about $40 billion on all of these programs, which amounts to less than 1% of our annual budget. The funding also includes the salaries for USAID's approximately 10,000 staff, most of whom are deployed in countries around the world, and some are based here in Washington, D.C. You may be asking, why would we spend money around the world at all? Well, apart from the moral obligations of providing assistance to vulnerable people in many places around the world, development and aid programs exist to further America's interests, build stability, and open up new trade opportunities for the U.S. According to USAID, U.S. foreign assistance has always had a twofold purpose of furthering America's interests while improving lives in the developing world. USAID carries out U.S. foreign policy by promoting broad-scale human progress at the same time it expands stable and free societies, creates markets and trade partners for the United States, and fosters goodwill around the world. Apparently, despite having the agency function fine in his first term in office, Trump now thinks that USAID needs to be abolished, and Elon Musk is leading the way. This all started on Trump's first day in office, when he issued an executive order that mandated that all foreign aid be paused for 90 days. Of course, he issued a waiver so that we could still send weapons to Israel, but that's besides the point. This 90-day stop work order was unprecedented, and it caused chaos in the humanitarian and development fields. Organizations big and small that are reliant on funding to operate didn't know what to do. Many furloughed employees, some laid workers off, and life-saving programs around the world stopped functioning overnight. It's not just that. Many organizations that receive funding from USAID or through other USAID recipients tend to fund projects before they get all their money from these federal grants. This happens due to the disbursement cycle of a grant, and they need to keep programs moving. It usually works out fine because you have a contract with the federal government or a sub-grantee, and you know when the money's going to come in. But many of these organizations have already spent money on programs that now may never receive the funding that was promised to them. Besides the economic burden and uncertainty, it's not an exaggeration to say that people around the world are going to die because of this 90-day pause. Food assistance, medical assistance, shelter, water and sanitation, vaccines, all stopped. After an uproar from civil society, implementing organizations, and some members of Congress, eventually Secretary of State Marco Rubio created a waiver for life-saving programs. Problem is, it wasn't immediately clear what a life-saving program included. For instance, food assistance in a famine-stricken country would be pretty clear that it's a life-saving program. But is the fuel subsidy that allows the trucks to bring the food aid to where it needs to go included in the life-saving program? We don't know. What about the support for hospitals and healthcare clinics? Can the whole program be funded? Or is money only going to pay for life-saving care? Are shelters and blankets considered a life-saving program? What about in countries where people would freeze to death without them? Neither government employees nor implementing agencies fully understood what programs were going to be funded and which ones weren't. And they didn't know within what time frame funding may be unlocked. It's also been reported in ProPublica that there was not a sophisticated system to input which programs were or were not covered in the waiver. Instead, employees were asked to fill in a spreadsheet detailing what programs they thought should be covered. One USAID employee said that the waiver for humanitarian assistance has been a farce, with some questioning if the waiver was just an attempt to placate some, while never really meaning to issue full waivers. In addition to the stop work order, 60 civil servants within USAID were placed on administrative leave for supposedly attempting to circumvent President Trump's executive order. And even more USAID employees were put on leave after security officials who tried to prevent Elon Musk's Doge team from accessing classified documents and personnel files. Doge is Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, which is not a federal agency, has no mandate to operate in the federal government. Yet under Donald Trump, Musk and his team seem to have been given extraordinary powers and access. Rumors and fears began to swirl that Trump and Musk's ultimate goal was to completely shut down USAID. And then over the weekend, this past weekend, on Saturday, February 1st, USAID's website was taken offline and its Twitter account deactivated as well. Again, another completely unprecedented step. By Monday, USAID employees were told not to come into the office and work from home. Democrats in Congress have been calling out Trump and Musk for these illegal actions. Some Democrats hosted a press conference in front of USAID's office here in DC, speaking about the importance of the agency and criticizing Trump and Musk's overreach.
What Trump and Musk have done is not only wrong, it's illegal. USAID was established by an act of Congress, and it can only be disbanded by an act of Congress.
Not only to fight for federal employees who dedicate themselves every day to a humanitarian task, we are here to save lives, because that is what AID does. You name it, AID is there. In the fight against HIV, in the fight to protect the Uyghur population in China, in the fight to protect refugees, in the fight to make sure that there's food security everywhere, AID is there. It is the lead development agency in the world. And no one elected Elon Musk to dismantle it.
Make no mistake, this effort by Elon Musk and so-called Doge to shut down the Agency for International Development is an absolute gift to our adversaries, to Russia, to China, to Iran and others, because AID is an essential instrument of U.S. foreign policy and U.S. national security. So this has nothing to do with making the U.S. government more efficient and everything to do with aiding and abetting our adversaries around the world.
Musk took to X to brag about shutting down the agency and tweeted a bunch of misinformation about USAID, and for some reason posted several times that USAID was a criminal organization. Republicans for years have been trying to gut foreign assistance funding, especially for line items that they find truly offensive, like peacekeeping operations and support for the United Nations. What is strange, though, is that Trump didn't seem to have a problem running USAID for the first 4 years of administration, and Republicans in Congress have been eerily silent, but they've been approving USAID's budget for decades. Apparently, and who knows what will really happen since things are moving pretty quickly right now, it seems like Trump wants to abolish USAID and fold some of its programs into the State Department. This would likely completely transform the work of the agency and potentially create a bureaucratic nightmare for years to come. The latest news is that Trump has appointed Secretary of State Marco Rubio as acting USAID administrator, so now he has two massive jobs. And Rubio has appointed Pete Morocco, who has previously worked at USAID in the State Department during Trump's first term and doesn't have the best reputation among staff, to basically lead the shutdown of USAID. I wonder how Democratic senators are feeling having given Rubio such a glowing confirmation hearing just a few weeks ago. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that USAID is a perfect entity. Is there room to reform USAID? Absolutely. For years, I've lamented that USAID is a bloated organization that spends way too much money on what's known as the Beltway Bandits, these huge implementing organizations that are based in DC and operate around the world. Due to USAID's extremely complex and rigorous funding process, these organizations have spent years and a ton of money perfecting the application process to allow them to win massive awards and take a huge chunk of money off the top before that money goes to programs that are being implemented around the world. It would be amazing if USAID became more of a direct implementing organization, putting staff directly in the field to implement programs directly. And if USAID could help develop a streamlined process to support smaller, locally led organizations with less funding and way more impact. There's a lot that could be done. But Trump and Musk don't want to do the work to reform the agency. They just want to blow it up. And it seems like Rubio is more than happy to do their bidding. Now, what can Democrats do to stop this? Currently, it doesn't seem like there's much that they can do. This is a wider problem of decades of ceding power to the executive branch and Congress just not doing its job as an oversight body. But it's also because Republicans control the House and Senate, and Dems really just don't have that much power. However, Dems in the Senate can put up a bit of a fight. They can decide to block nominations, block legislation, really just try to grind Congress to a halt until Trump reverses this order. This won't work for everything, and there's ways that Republicans can go around them, but they need to put up a fight. Not just to protect USAID and the programs that the agency runs, but to draw a line in the sand. For Trump and Musk, this is just the beginning. It's a trial balloon. They're trying to see what they can get away with, and so far, it's a hell of a lot. Supposedly, there are also efforts to sue the government to stop this from happening. But by the time that happens, it may be too late. And even if a judge does order a short-term stop, Trump padded the federal courts and the Supreme Court in his first term. It's unlikely that the case would win. So in summary, it's a really dark day in America, and it's likely going to get a lot darker. It's only been 2 weeks, and already so much damage has been done. We have 4 more years of this, and meanwhile, millions of people around the world will suffer because billionaire bros decided to blow up the system without any real justification or plan.